Why do you think that is?
Are we going to talk daddy issues here, Paul?
Listen, I'm trying to learn from everyone. Anyone that has any sort of daddy issue, I'm like, okay.
Tell me
not
how
doing
do I
that
avoid
because
this?
I do not want that, right? I mean, I think it's universal with your kids disconnect from you starting when you become a teenager, but you still want that relationship. You still care about them so much. So yeah, we don't have to really go into it if you don't want to, but
I don't mind. I think my father and I are very similar. And whenever it's that thing, when you're similar with somebody, you butt heads. Because they're telling you to do something in a way that you're recognizing that behavior on yourself. But at the same time, you're like, don't talk to me that way. Right? So like my dad and I are similar. But I think, there was divorce resentment. Because my parents hid it very well from me, so I didn't see it coming. It was a very much, for a week at the house, things did not look good. But I thought, oh my God, my parents are fighting for the first time ever. That is so interesting. To like a Sunday conversation of, we've decided to separate, to him leaving that same day. Like bags were packed out the door. So it was like a big surprise for me. And my father lost his father, so his big thing was, oh, you still have your dad, like, I'm here for anything. I'm a phone call away. He said this to me throughout my teenage years. And me thinking, well, your dad left without a choice. My man had a heart attack. He didn't want to go. You chose to leave. So that caused resentment. And I think, too, is it's a hard thing for children who look up to their parents a lot, which I did. Like, in the duality of my parents' relationship, my father was the person I looked up to, right? I would not translate this so my mother doesn't watch this, but like my father was the person I looked up to, and he did everything in my eyes so wrong throughout the separation, and my mother did everything right.
That's interesting.
In regards to me, a 12-year-old child, like in my eyes, like my mother was like, no man at the house ever, because you don't want to bring a man to a house to your teenage daughter, right? Like just statistically speaking. And my father was...
no man in the house, like for her, like her...
Correct.
In her dating life.
Correct. She was like...
Wow.
So like, that's a part of her life that she gave up for years because I was there.
And why do you think that? Well, why do you think that's a good idea, or why did it work for you?
Well, I just think statistically, right? Like, sometimes older men and teenage girls, it doesn't have a history of rape in that.
Okay.
In that world.
I hear like so this comes from a sense of protection.
Yeah.
Like my daughter is now of age where she is.
Yes. So it was something that I very much respect her for. Like that choice. My father started dating someone less than a month after he walked away, so that it was hard to respect that side of things. And it was also hard that she was closer in age to me than him, which as an adult, you learn, like, age doesn't matter that much. But when you're 12, you're like...
It must have felt weird.
It was.
And when did you decide to come to the United States? Like, what was that about? Like, why'd you leave?
While we're talking on my dad on that subject matter, I don't think he was very much a... Camila is choosing to go to the U.S. I wanted to go to Europe to try and play professional soccer, Paul. I didn't want to come here. But my dad was always much like education. Like education first. And I think a degree in the U.S. was always a dream of his. And I think that was pushed onto me a little bit. And I didn't mind as long as I played soccer. So I played Division I soccer in Mississippi. So I was like, okay, I'll go.
You played D1?
I did. A small school, but I did play D1.
Camila.
Paul.
That's badass.
It's
College
something.
Sports. That's cool. And so you grew up playing soccer your whole life. And you were pretty good at it if you could go to...
Small school.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Was it NCAA?
It was. Small school.
Okay. Well, you're being humble. That's cool, though.
No, I'm not.
Okay, fine. You're terrible at soccer. How about that?
I wouldn't say terrible, but I wouldn't say that I'm like average.
Okay. Mm-hmm. It's a good place to be, at least mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you start playing soccer, and Like, how does that process? Your dad's like, you should go, you should go, you should go. Did your mom want you to go, or?
My mother interferes less than my dad. I think if she were to say what her heart felt was like, don't go, stay here, study here. But she's always like, if that's what you want to do, go. That's very much. She's not a politician, but I think when it comes to like interfering with someone's life, she doesn't. And that has to do with her upbringing. Right? Her upbringing was very controlling. So that's why my leash was quite loose. Because she was like, I don't want you to feel the way that I felt, where, you know, she didn't have choices and such.
So you go to school in Mississippi?
Mm-hmm. How did I come up here?
How did you pick a small school in Mississippi?
It picked me. It was the best deal. You know, I had it wasn't a full ride, but it was very close to, like, I had to pay very little money. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Like, I had some schools in New York and some other places. There were also, like...
Are you just, like, picking places on a map and just applying places? Like, how does it work?
No, so I did it through a company, and that company is used to, like, getting student athletes into the U.S. So they kind of, like, requested a video, resume, all that stuff. They translated it. They did all that side of things, and then they sent it to schools. And then the schools were like, yay, nay.
And Mississippi said yay.
Mississippi said yay. And Mississippi said, Mississippi had the best deal. So.
And then when did you move to Baltimore?
2017.
Okay.
I moved to Baltimore, also school related, graduate school. That brought me to Baltimore.
Film school?
No, I didn't go to film school. Believe it or not, crazy. My master's is in photography and electronic media. Okay. So adjacent.
Yeah, absolutely.
A cousin.
Yeah. So how did you become so popular in the DC area?
Honestly, it's the looks. You don't like it when I say it, and other people don't either, but it's true. There's a quota that sometimes people need to meet, and, you know, the beginning of my career was done on quotas, and I'm not ashamed to say it, and I'm thankful for it. Otherwise, I'd be further back than I am now. You know, a lot of people, there's not a lot of women in the sound department, right? And I think that the majority of women in the sound department, we find it in post. So there's not a lot of us on location right now. There's 3 in town? And
compared to, let's say, about 100 other men.
Yeah.
Would you say? Around there, right? Something like that.
I think
maybe 100.
I don't know. There's people coming all the time. I thought it was 60 and then became 80, so I think 100 sounds about right. So I've heard of a couple other women, but they're like up and coming and just arrived. So it's the amounts are small. And as you know, sound department is the last call. So I think a lot happens where people are calling me last minute. They're looking at their roster and they go, oh, shit. Look at all this bag of dicks. Like, who can we call? And I think my career was started out that way. And, but besides that, because now it sustains itself, right? Like, that's how it started. I think a lot of people forget that once you're at a certain level, the technical side of things is expected. You're expected to deliver, right? Not all the time. Issues happen. Everybody's human, but you're expected to deliver. So you got to be nice. You got to be pleasant to be around. And I think one of my biggest qualities is that I'm friendly. I can make friends with anybody. Always been that way since high school, because I've always been part of so many different groups, right? Like, I like the arts, but I also like to play sports. There are very few people that navigate those two worlds. So I've always knew how to be in different groups, how to navigate, how to make friends, how to listen.
That's good. Do you give any credit to your parents? I mean, of course, they raised you. Were there any pivotal moments where you were struggling, or maybe... of course, we all have our struggles, especially as teenagers. But do you remember anything? Any stories about maybe your mom or your dad kind of giving you that self-confidence boost?
Self-confidence boost. When I was later, they actually tried to take it away. But when I went, they did that great job, like very young. And what I mean by take it away is, like, Brazilian women are very girly, right? Like, it's a very. My grandmother is well into her 80s. You're gonna blip the age because she lies about it. And she does not leave the house without makeup. If she's going out, heels going on. You know what I mean? That's the culture, and I was never that. So when we were like getting older, it was like, really? Jeans and Converse again? And I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with the jeans and Converse that I've been wearing? But they did such a great job at a young age that by the time they tried to interfere with anyway, it was too late. They had done too good of a job earlier on. Truly just like letting your child be who they want to be is the best way to build confidence in them. And my parents did that for me, both of them. Like really, really did that for me.
So what do you remember about before in your younger years? And you said they kind of built you up by letting you be who you wanted to be.
Well, I don't necessarily remember. I just knew I was allowed to be, my mother's biggest dream is that I was a ballet dancer. I wanted to play soccer. She disliked it, but she went on with it. Right? Like, for example, Flamengo is the team that I support in Brazil. It's like the biggest team in Rio. They just did a partnership with Farm Rio, which is this big designer brand. So they released jerseys with that company. So if it was my younger age, she'd be buying me a dress. Oh, I bought you a dress for Christmas. Now she understands. Just like, let me buy her a girlier version of a jersey of the team she supports. That's how we met in the middle. So it's like trying to figure out how to.
So she's going to buy you like a pink Ravens jersey and send it over, huh?
Probably.
Yeah.
That would be her version of, here, I love you, but still you are my little girl, That's how she functions.
Yeah. Well, that's nice she gave you the space to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge when you're a parent. Letting your kid be who they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you need rules. You need to be that authoritative figure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And be there.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds so simple on paper, but it gets more and more complex.
In the movies, people say, do this. Why? Because I'm your parent and I told you so. My parents never did that. If they were asking me to do something, there was a reason that was well explained. And I always had a space at the table to argue against. I wasn't always going to win it, but that gave me the confidence to be able to talk to anybody. Like if I felt like what I was feeling was true and honest and that needed to get out there, they've always done that from a young age.
That's awesome. That's still why
Mm-hmm.
that's still why you talk to them now.
Yeah, probably.
I talk to so many people. They don't have relationships with their parents. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know why that fascinates you, but it does. Maybe because I'm a new parent and I'm like, this is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I love this child so much. All the things, all the things you hear about having kids. It's all true.
If you don't let your child speak from a young age, later in life they're not gonna want to. Like they're gonna feel like they didn't have. I'm not a parent, but just from my experience as a child, they're not gonna want to speak to you about certain things. They're not gonna want to speak to you altogether, right? Because there are certain topics that I stay away from with my parents, right? It's just like easier that way. But I imagine that for some people, if your reality is your parents don't listen to you ever, why would you want to talk to them? Like, forget that they're your parents. These are people that don't listen to you. Why would you engage?
It's true.
It's that simple.
It's pretty, yeah, it's basic.
That simple.
It's very simple. Listen to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Totally random, but you're married, right?
I am married.
Do you guys have any thoughts on kids? Because it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
With two women, it's more of a commitment, just in the sense of like there aren't any accidents. Let's say, right?
That's
like,
actually my biggest dream, to post a photo of one of us pregnant and say, "Oopsie, we didn't see it coming."
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you got that planned in the back.
Yeah. So when it happens, you will know she said she was going to do it, and then here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very common for. This is probably just in my mind. Maybe there's no truth to this, but this is how it's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like sometimes I know a lot of men, just in a heterosexual sense, right? Men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of men. It feels like men sometimes, generally speaking, want kids more than women.
Really?
Yeah.
That surprises me.
Well, I just know so many young women that aren't having kids and don't want kids. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone makes their own choices, but it's this new, interesting thing where, and I know it's complicated, right? Because there's finances, there's...
Not even that. You said that, and I said, really? And then I was like, hold on a second. It actually makes a lot of sense. It's very simple. What's your wife's last name?
Foster.
So she kept her last name.
What?
She kept her...
She did not.
She didn't. So it's...
Which is very surprising because she's very, progressive and all that stuff. Yeah. So she took my name for some reason.
She took your name.
Yeah.
So Schmitz is her last name.
Yeah.
Right? So, traditionally, if we're also in the heterosexual sense, right, women have to give up more when they become mothers. I mean, if I use my parents' divorce as an example, my father walked away. He still had commitments to me as a child, right? But that door closed, and it was a new life for him. Meanwhile, I stayed with my mother, and that was never asked. That's one thing my parents never asked me. Do you want to stay with your mom or your dad? It's just assumed, right? And usually women are the ones who give up their careers to raise the child. And even before all of that, it's their bodies that are changing. It's the back pain. It's the not being able to see your feet at a certain point. It's just, they're the ones. Guys are in and out.
Yeah.
Literally. And then you see 9 months later the results of your performance.
Of your 2 minutes, yeah. I mean, it's... Yeah, so on paper it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
In pure equality, one gender has to create a baby, create a human inside their body. 9 months of being uncomfortable. Some are very uncomfortable. I got a buddy that's having his 4th kid, and
in this economy,
yeah, right. And she's been violently ill for the last 3, like for the entire pregnancy. She gets sick, and
all the other 3 pregnancies.
The first one was easy, and
second was hard.
Second was hard. Third was hard, and she's doing her 4th. I'm just
why?
Like, why is she like, dang?
Yeah. Are they religious? Because if they don't believe in abortion,
no,
it was a choice to have the 4th child.
Yeah.
And then she's just a soldier. That's what she is.
Right.
She's a soldier.
I gotta talk to her. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that makes sense. Do you have any other thoughts on that? On just being a woman in 2024 and kind of this.
So many.
You
want to go down that road?
Well, let's pause for a second. But maybe. So being a woman in 2024, how have you built your people skills? What has worked for you when you're going into a set where you don't know anyone?
I think earlier in my career, I made the mistake of thinking, no, I must do my job at the best of my qualities at all costs. It doesn't work like that. It's a team sport. And I grew up playing team sports. So you learn that there's a hierarchy. Certain people come above you. You also learn to know when you should push them back. It's a learned thing. If you're talking about people skills in general, I learned because of my family. It's like, even before my parents were separated, divorced, my mom had a side of the family that lived in one city, and my dad had a side of the family that lived in a different city. And the 3 of us lived in a different state. So vacation was always spent with these 2 sides of the family. And it was always about, I'm going to spend this much time here and this much time there. And it was always about navigating and learning how to play fair. And trust that when your grandmothers are jealous, you need to be able to learn how to navigate that stuff. So I learned that part of it very early. Because they're jealous because they just want to spend time with you. That's the reality of it. Yes, it sucks because they're putting pressure on you as a young person. But in reality, they just want to spend time with you. Once you translate that later in life into filmmaking is if you've been able to disengage or to navigate your jealous grandmothers, you can navigate any territory, really. And I don't know. I'm friendly. I am blunt. I know when to bark back. I know when to stay quiet. And sometimes, I do lose my patience. I have lost my patience. It happens. But most of the time, I just know when to walk away. Walking away is a great feeling sometimes. And I think what has saved me time and time again is realizing that we as technicians, we make suggestions. The creative teams make decisions. So if they don't care, why should I?
That's key.
Mm-hmm.
That's key for people to hear.
That's super simple. I was day playing for a feature. There's a feature in town. I'm not going to say much about it, but I was day playing there. We were doing a single take at every direction. So if this is the scene, we do one single take over here, one single take over here, one single take over here. And we were filming near the airport. So there was an airplane at every take. I was working as an assistant. The mixer was like, hold for plane. The second time he said it, the director said, we're not going to hold for plane. If we need to ADR this whole scene, we will. And in my world, I was like, okay, bet. I know where they're at. It's like, it's extremely disheartening to hear because you're hearing that your work there is not quite as valuable. But if you take your ego out of the equation, they do have a show to run. And the show must go on. And if they understand the process, because sometimes a lot of what we do is educating other people about how it works, right? I don't know. I've worked with Oscar-winning directors, and there's still some educating that goes. And that's okay, because in their world, there's still some educating that goes from their end to mine, right? It's always an exchange. But just knowing when to put your weapons down and let them take over versus pushing it back is a super valuable skill. That took me a second to understand, because before I was like, we must capture good audio at all costs. No.
I go by the same. I have the same attitude of, if the director doesn't care, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's still your job to care
mm-hmm.
up until a certain point. You can point out things in a certain way. You can unplug a fridge. You can do all these things to make things sound better. But you have to trust the director
mm-hmm.
knows what they're doing. And if they don't, and you bring something up and they don't care about it, you just keep it moving.
And sometimes it's an educational conversation too, because sometimes, especially in the world that we live in, where we can fix so much in post and AI has come in. So I started my career as a dialogue editor, which that kind of helps when I'm trying to argue with people. But
wait, hold on. What?
Backtrack.
Because you're editing dialogue, now you can argue with people better?
No, because so I knew the limit before AI, right? Knowing the limitations of how much you can clean something up always was an argument that helped when discussing. Should we do this again? Should we not do this again?
You have experience in post.
Correct.
So when you're on location.
Yes.
You're like, hey, I know what's the capabilities of post, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I did the transition backwards, from post to location.
I'd love to hear your experience with how you learned to focus more on the people than the actual craft. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's the wrong way to say it. You're not focused more on the people, but I look at it as a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Like a director told me the other day, she's like, I'd rather have a B technician with an A attitude than an A technician with a B attitude.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes we work with some great people and sometimes we work with some pieces of work. And I think for me, really what it was you learn people. You learn people. And, you learn when to say something. You learn when to stay quiet. You learn when to mention. And you kind of know early on, after some years of doing it, who cares and who doesn't. And you just go by their rules.
Yeah.
Everybody in this world, everybody just wants to feel like heard. So if you're working with somebody and they clearly are not listening to you, that kind of breaks things a little bit, right? So it was by working with those two types of people, the people who hear and the people who don't. And then you learn to speak up and you learn to stay quiet. And then you learn that, what directors do is hard. They have so much on their plates. What producers do is hard. Making something happen filmmaking is not a miracle because there's money out there, but it's hard and the money goes away very fast. So I think because my wife also works in production management, her and I have been able to have this back and forth where I would go, but the crew, and she'd go, but the project, and we'd meet in the middle and understand, well, if people were just honest with each other, if people just talked, and that's really about what it is, talking, voicing, and hearing. Basic.
That's it.
Communication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think freelancing is being self-employed is very unique. And I just don't like seeing people struggle doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see it. You see with certain crew members,
mm-hmm.
you're like, you are sabotaging your career right now
mm-hmm.
by acting this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's interesting because a lot of the times it's with veterans. At least I've noticed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What would you say to somebody that's just starting out? Let's say, what would you say to yourself 7 years ago?
All the times you do it wrong is just practice for when you get it right. I come up from sports. Sports, you do something, a big thing in soccer, you're trying to hit the crossbar. You're never going to hit it the first time you try it. If you do it, it's a lucky shot. You're not going to do it a second time. And then you go back and you practice and you do it again and again and again and again. And it becomes second nature. Don't be scared to put yourself out there. And I'm a big believer on what's yours is yours. Ain't nobody going to take it. If it's meant to be a job for you, a work for you, a career for you, it's going to be that. It's going to work out that way. Show up, do your job, be respectful. The rest comes.
What are your thoughts on social media and how important is it in today's world?
For our career or
mm-hmm.
in general?
Both.
In general, it fucking sucks, right? It's a horrible place. For our career, I think sometimes it can be both great and horrible. It's become a popularity contest that I'm always winning. No, just
I was going to say that anyway. So, you see the same few names and you're like, yeah, they're great.
It's who is Camila blowing? No.
Wait a minute, I thought she was gay. What is going on here?
Fuck. What do a guy got to do to get it in there? No. I make friends and friends recommend you. But the other side of it is sometimes people are recommending other people just because they're friends. Can these people do the job? I've seen it yes, and I've seen it no. So.
I've also seen recommendations for people that
mm-hmm.
don't have a good attitude. I'm like,
Don't
why
deliver.
why are so many people? It's weird. It's like this weird online persona I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to, I hope we're all just trying to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be respectful to everyone. But I will see a few names out there that people bring up when it comes to DC sound, and I'm like,
Name names. Let's hear it, Paul.
yeah, no, I will never name names, and part of me has to hold myself back and mentally and thinking they're just trying to make a living. But I'm also like thinking to myself, who are all these online people that don't actually know them?
Mm-hmm.
Really, they just know their online persona. So it's just this. I find myself a little frozen at times just watching it all, and I'm like, there's positives and negatives to social media. I think it does make us more connected, but I think we're also more disconnected as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, it's horrible. If this was a dinner, if this wasn't a podcast, right? If this was a dinner, I probably would have pulled out my phone and be like, let's see how many emails have come up. I wonder what's going on. As a matter of fact, someone tagged me on Facebook for a job, Paul. Let me go answer it, because time is of the essence.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time because
I appreciate you too.
Yeah, some of this podcast stuff it's been really fun because you actually, how often are you one-on-one with somebody talking about things with no distractions, no phones? Maybe often, and that'd be good on
Not
you.
often.
Not often.
Mm-mm.
Me neither. It doesn't happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're hanging out, the crew's great, you're having a good time, and then all of a sudden you look at everyone and everyone's on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hey, that's fine, as long as there's a balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with kids, but we don't need to go down there. I'm just, it's like my number one fear. Like, what do I do here? She's gonna have a phone, right?
Mm-hmm. My sister got her stuff kind of early. My sister is young. She has a phone now, which I think it's okay for her to have a phone at that age. The part that sucks is that she also has access to social media, and I don't think that is okay. I don't think an 11-year-old girl should be on Instagram. I don't. Shoot me. I don't. It's like the stuff that people say on social media is sad. Forget the predatory stuff. Forget the people who are there to prey on young children. Let's take them out of this equation. How people talk about women's bodies, women's hair, will damage people for life. Children shouldn't be in it. I'm thankful that by the time Facebook became popular in Brazil, I was 14. So it was like the later age. And when it became popular, it wasn't this thing that we were all going to go and use it. It was just this thing that existed there. And we were going to connect with our friends around the world. And we were going to talk every once in a while, kind of like how people email. Probably less than how people email now. But then it just took off and it became this crazy thing. And then Instagram came when I was 16. And I'm dating myself here, which is something I never do. That's something that I learned in our job. Don't tell people your age.
Look at who you're talking to here. You're significantly younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do you know that?
Because you talk about Facebook. You're 14 years old. Facebook.
Fuck.
There is harmless creeping, right? You have women and men do it.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they might check out somebody's social media now. That's such a thing,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get somebody's Instagram or get somebody's tag and you see their page, it's like this whole way that we interact now. We judge people based on all these things that they post, as opposed to like a normal connection that you would have with somebody on a college campus, right? I don't know. I can't speak to that. I have no idea what college campuses are like.
Yeah, but it
now.
wasn't just social media who did that. Like right before social media, you would talk to a friend who then knew who that person was, and you would just hear a different, like, social media just sped up the process and put faces to it too, images. Before, people would just gossip, which would be sometimes just as harmful, but sometimes harmless too.
What else, Camila? What else we got?
While you're thinking about what you're gonna ask, thank you to you. because thank you to you. That's redundant, but thank you. Women always know where their allies are at, and you were one of the first guys in this area or otherwise to really start recommending me for jobs. You know? And when you talk about me like being popular or names or such, I would always keep my circle of the people I recommended exclusive to women, because we would send each other's jobs. Because I've learned that with time, I would recommend men and they would never recommend me. But you're not part of that group. I recommend you and you recommend me. And that deserves a prop and a thank you. Public.
Well, you know what they say.
What do they say?
Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Which one am I, Paul?
Enemies is the wrong term, but I would say, it's easy to get jealous and it's easy to have a scarcity mindset.
If they're working, why aren't I?
Yeah, and you don't want clients getting stolen from you, which, you know what? It happens. And I have probably stolen clients from other people.
Yeah.
So if I recommend you and somebody decides maybe they like you a little bit more than me, good for you, But if I give you a client, I just trust that you'll give one back. I mean, and that's just how it works. It's just it's
the
trying
flip side of
to
it.
help each other out, and you just gotta. That's the hardest thing about freelancing. I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's I keep going back to the people aspect, and what I'm trying to communicate is sometimes you just don't get along with people as much as somebody else, and that's okay. But you have to be able to make friends. And that's a hard skill to learn, because I think some people are better at it than others naturally. Some people, but you can control your attitude. You can control to be helpful. You don't have to be a super funny guy. You don't have to crack jokes. You don't have to tell funny stories. You just have to have a good attitude and be friendly, right? That's it.
If you're a decent human, which I know you personally are, right? If I send you a job, I know that's going to come back at some point. And that's how we stay working. The people that I recommend me, and vice versa. And I would truly hope that if you recommend me for a job and the client gets back to you and say, don't send her again, that one, you would tell me like their reason, if they have a reason. Sometimes it's just a personality mismatch, and that happens. But if it's something else, right, or if they expected something different, or it's something I did wrong, that's how we grow. And, being honest with each other, having each other's backs is the way to keep the sound community honest and true to what we're trying to do, which is work, put food on the table, pay our rent or mortgage, and have a life outside of work. Not me, I'm addicted to work. My life is work, but a life outside of work for those who have a life outside of work.
Camila, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you have any movies coming up that you're writing about that you want to share? Or
I have a couple things that I'm writing about, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to talk about it yet. But I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you on set soon.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Camila.
Thank you.
All right.